Hello and welcome. That's your cue.
Well, I already missed a cue? Really? It's our first episode! How's it going, everybody?
Yes, you may know this is my friend Gru, and welcome to... What are we going to call this show again?
Tales from the Tabletop Tavern.
Yes, Tales from the Tabletop Tavern. Basically, this is going to be similar to Spoonie's Counter Monkey, where we're going to talk about stuff through the tabletop, either talking about the games themselves, to our adventures, to weird stuff in, like, maybe tabletop gaming or concepts. Just,
Or weird quirks of the rules, or just awesome stories we've got.
Exactly. And today we're going to be talking about things that I'm sure every D&D player or tabletop gamer has. Crazy stuff they've seen someone do or they've done themselves.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you
Why
want
don't
to
you
start,
start us
or
off,
should
Brent?
I?
Or why don't you start us off?
Alright, so a little backstory with me is that I'm actually relatively new into tabletop gaming. Growing up, I never really had a chance to do that. I didn't know any people to do that. I mean, I knew of D&D, but I never really got into it until 4th edition. And I only got into 4th edition.
That is the unproduct.
Yeah. Now, I got into 4th edition because there was this game... When I moved from Alaska into Idaho, there was a nearby gaming store, and they had, like, these tabletop nights that I could... once a week I can go over. And they were just pulling out, 4th edition. It was in the middle of 4th edition. It's when they started doing Dark Sun. They had, like, a preview adventure. And me, I got to play the wizard. So, yeah, looking back, I will admit I had a good time. Though I was a bit of an ass thinking about it. I was still new at interacting with people. But I definitely had a creative mind. I was definitely trying to think outside the box in a couple of things.
That's really all you need, especially with a dead simple setting like 4th. Just as a bit of an aside, so that the audience knows my disdain for 4th. 4th edition is a great example of when rules as metaphor goes horribly, horribly wrong. The rules for 4th encourage you to play it like a video game and to not use your imagination. So having an imagination going in is a massive asset because it's not going to try to encourage you to use it.
Yeah, and that's probably why what happened, happened. So, okay, this is like, I think it was the 3rd section. At that point, I was actually getting a bit annoyed because during the adventure, everybody else was getting magical items. Like, the freaking Thycrene Warrior, which, by the way, I wanted to play, but someone else got to it first. I mean, come on, it's a giant... It's a mantis man. That thing is awesome. But, I'm getting a bit upset. I'm sort of in the background, and we're going through this canyon. I think we were escorting a man to an area across the desert. And we get ambushed by some kobolds. A tribe of, pissed off kobolds. So the first round starts, and everybody's engaging. The Thycrene Warrior's, in the middle, doing his thing. I think he had like a, sort of like a whirlwind spin attack. But there is something that was weird about this area. So imagine this. We're in the middle of the canyon. We went past a weird pool of black sand. We naturally didn't touch it because that was weird. But it was, after a while, we get ambushed. So behind us is the pool, and in front of us is the kobolds. Next round starts. We were told, I think, to make... Was it like a perception, search check? I can't remember what all the skills were. But I was in the back as wizard, and I actually was able to hear what was going on. So I turned my head, and the GM says... A giant praying mantis comes out of the black sands, and it looks hungry. What did I immediately do? I went into my pack and I offered it a ration. I thought, I'll feed it if it looks hungry. Everybody at the table was like, what?
Tame the wild beast with food.
Exactly. Everybody was like, what are you doing? You're our wizard. You have to attack it. Like,
I mean, that's what charm monster is for, you know?
We were level 1, I think. I think we were like level 1
I know.
or 2.
That's a staple of wizarding. It might be more in the bard's wheelhouse because he's got the charisma to back it up, but still.
Yeah, so the GM just like looks at me. He just sort of okay. The thing about the GM is that he seemed to be the only person who, from what I could tell, was the only person who didn't seem to get angry. Everyone else was like, you know, glaring at me or calling me an idiot or some little kid. Because I was like a preteen or something, like in the middle of height, you know, being a teen and a preteen. I was like in the middle.
Right.
And he says, all right, you know, roll the dice, we'll see what happens. I rolled a 20. I naturally crit this. He rolls his die. He has this big, his eyes were wide open. He was astounded. And everybody's like, well, what happened? And he just quietly lifted up the GM screen and he said, it's a 1. It takes the food out of your mouth, out of your hand, eats it, and it lets you ride on its back. And we slaughtered all those kobolds. And I got to be a wizard riding on the back of the mantis.
Yeah, that's a pretty kick-ass story.
The sad part is that we couldn't keep it. The mantis turned on us afterwards because there was no more prey and we kind of had to fight it.
Yeah, a good GM worth his salt is going to make sure that happens. Because you don't want to give the party something too massive for too long.
Exactly, but everybody was like, I had a bit of respect that night for thinking outside the box.
Yeah.
The GM even said, technically I shouldn't have let you have done that, but, you know, because there was nothing written in the rules for anyone, you know, nothing in the encounter to basically say, oh, what if they try that? But
I know that this is probably one of those gaming stories that everybody's heard, but that totally reminds me of the combination of critical failures and successes and things that led to random hilarity that was floating around the internet for a while. It's the one where fighter is fighting an orc, and he tries to hit and critical fumbles and ends up dancing with the orc. And the orc tries to hit and critically fumbles and reciprocates. And it's like, okay, fine, I'm going to try to seduce the orc, and he rolls a critical success. And so now he and the orc are married.
You know what? That's still a pretty awesome story. And you know what? Yeah. I just love that one line. I sneak up behind the orc. You sneak up behind the orc. I try to backstab him. Roll a 1. You gently caress his back. The orc feels uncomfortable.
Yeah, that's one of those things. If you link those up like that, you can lead to awesome shit. It's like, but that's one of those D&D stories up there with the gazebo.
The gazebo, Sir Barrington.
Yeah, Sir Barrington.
Yeah.
But, and for those audience members who don't realize, the gazebo story is the game master says, okay, you guys see a gazebo at an empty field, and a player who doesn't know what a gazebo is whips out his cell phone and looks it over. It's not in the monster manual. I don't attack it. It must be some custom monster. No, it's a gazebo. Is it hostile? What's it look like? It looks like a gazebo.
It's painted white.
I attack. Well, it doesn't say it's painted white because that'd give it away. I attack it. Okay, the gazebo eats you. You're dead. Oh man.
Although, I'm pretty sure Jim, who's heard this story, will eventually want to make a gazebo golem.
Well, they exist in the Munchkin D20.
Oh my... What?!
Yeah.
Okay, one of these days, we're gonna have to go through that one as another
I
episode.
do not want to run the Munchkin D20. I'm sorry.
No, I'm not talking about us running it. I mean, I'm just talking about you telling us shit that's in there.
Well, there's...
No, we'll save that for another episode.
I'm just going to say the biggest reason why I won't run it is because there's a spell called Wall of Dice that involves you rolling all of the dice that exist in that room.
Yeah, I can see how that could be a problem, especially if you're in...
And if the person who casts it has to buy everyone pizza while he goes counting them.
That is both insanely awesome and insanely stupid.
Yeah. Well, that's the whole point. It's a funny game. It's like Hackmaster.
Or
anyway.
Or to a lesser extent, Paranoia. But Paranoia is less haha funny, more I just incinerated you funny.
Well, it's both kinds of funny.
True.
Because I'm going to be going haha when I incinerate you.
Yes. Yes, you will, friend computer.
Anyways.
We'll get to Paranoia later.
Yeah, but my biggest, most awesome story actually happened a bit more recently. We're playing Pathfinder, and we're doing a Legend of Zelda inspired game.
Yeah, I was there.
So there's a lot of Breath of the Wild in it for those of you who are Zelda fans, and that'll make some of the references I make in this story make a bit more sense.
Yeah, context for the plot is that we're taking it place in between...
Well, we don't need that much context. It's
after Wind Waker. We're exploring a whole new territory.
Yeah, that's about the context they need. And so I'm playing a Bokoblin alchemist using the Goblin rules for those of you who know Pathfinder, and I'm using a variant of an alchemist called Winged Marauder, which means I get a flying mount, and it's awesome. And I'm having a lot of fun with the character. It's
Deathy is
being able to
awesome.
Being able to fly around and chuck bombs at people's heads and not have to worry about getting killed because I'm just using maneuverability to stay alive. It's very, very fun.
It's very goblin-like. You just fly around, piss off the uglies below you, and they can't even touch you. That is a very goblin.
Well, I do quite a bit more than piss them off. I incinerate them.
Oh God, yes.
But yes, what ended up happening was first of all, I've been liberating all of the towns we've been going through and incorporating them into a centralized government using the Kingmaker rules because I'm an asshole like that.
We are. The GM isn't too angry at us. He's as long as we're the ones doing the work.
Andrew is an amazing GM because he is the kind of GM who no matter what ludicrous thing you say, he just points to you and says, "You got it," and it just goes off, and you have to deal with all the consequences of it. And he's an amazing GM like that. And I feel terrible for taking advantage of how awesome a GM he is.
I'm going to send him this video. You know that, right?
Yeah, I know.
But you know what? I think he knows that you know what he's doing, but at the very least, again, he's making us live with the consequences, too.
Oh, yeah. That's the other reason why I always tell him my plans for my ludicrous things and why I do all my homework. So I want to try to at least make him feel like I earned it, you know?
You definitely have that in spades.
Yeah. So what we end up doing is we find this abandoned factory that makes guardians. And those of you who don't know Breath of the Wild, they're like Magitech golems with big, long, spindly legs.
Basically think
and
a mechanical daddy long leg of a goddamn cannon.
Yeah, with a goddamn frickin' laser in its fucking head. And So we've got this abandoned factory loaded up with raw materials, and we've got the town archaeologists going over and picking it apart and figuring out how everything works. And then we find out that there's a city with a thing we need. It's a MacGuffin. That's all you really need to know.
It's Legend of Zelda. There's always a MacGuffin.
Well, there's also the giant fetch quest with trading things, which thankfully Andrew hasn't used.
That is true.
Hi, I need this saw. Okay, thank you for this saw. I'll give you this barrel of booze. Okay, thank you for this barrel of booze. I'll give you this. Yeah, at least he's not doing that. That would not be fun. But
hey, Andrew, if you're listening to this, so help us God if you do that.
So we figure out this town, and it's abandoned and overrun with necromancers who are using the dead in that town to do necromancer things.
Yeah, they're assholes.
Yeah. And so initially we just try to assault their holdings. Possibly in this character's mind, it's possible to negotiate with them because we don't technically want to kick them out.
I mean, we don't. Trying to build a kingdom.
Well, we don't technically need to kick them out. I mean, they're not really bothering anybody, but we need stuff from that town, and they wouldn't listen, and they raised skeletons, and so we fought those skeletons. We got our asses kicked. Thankfully, nobody died.
Well, okay, technically, we didn't get our asses kicked. We actually won, but we made a tactical retreat because.
No, we depleted so much resources in that victory that it was essentially a defeat.
Okay, I guess technically, yeah, they repelled us, but we took out a lot of their resources as well.
Yeah, but when you're a necromancer, you can replenish your resources faster than the living people can.
Well, except for that giant Stalfos. That one we did take care of.
Basically, we decided to leave between waves because we knew the next wave would kill us.
Yeah. So, but yeah, the giant Stalfos was also important.
I just want to be honest. They frickin' kicked our asses.
Yeah.
And so we...
Hold on, you're kind of breaking up a bit.
Hold on. Hello, testing?
A little better.
Yeah, it's probably Skype being stupid.
Yeah,
anyways, so I go back to the Guardian factory, and everyone's going like, "Holy crap! What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? What do we do?" And this Deathy, my bokoblin, just stews for a moment, and then gets an idea and says, "Okay, everybody, you're going to take this cash, and I paid for all of our expenses for doing this because I'm not an asshole. I'm an asshole, but I'm not an asshole. I paid for all of our expenses in doing this, and I sent them back to town to bring back 2 barrels of whiskey. And they look at me like I'm kind of kooky. And I look at the GM and says,
I was pretty down. I had a kind of feeling you were doing. I just didn't know if it would work.
Yeah, well, I look at the GM and I say, I'm going to build a cruise missile out of the things we have here, and I'm going to fire it at the Necromancer Fortress.
I wasn't against the plan. I'm just like, wow, this is so crazy. It's so stupidly awesome. Let's do it.
Now, Andrew ended the session there, but like I said, I did all my homework. I ended up essentially drawing up an engineering paper on how it would be theoretically possible using the alchemical tools and regular chemical tools and engineering abilities that my character had on hand with 15th century technologies to basically build a variant on the V1 pulse jet rocket.
Yeah, and since we were in a Guardian factory, and Andrew did state that there were some broken down Guardians within there, we already had the shell for it. We didn't have to...
Oh yeah, we had enough material that we did not have to pay for material. The biggest cost we had was fuel. Though I think Andrew did make me pay for a few alchemical items I had to craft to make it work.
Well, you had to pay for some of the alchemical, like reagents. We had the barrels of whiskey. Not to mention the food because we were waiting in between. But the food we already had.
Well, yeah, and for those of you who don't know your history, the V1 was a German-designed intermediate-range missile from World War II. And it's got a kind of an engine called a pulse jet, which is kind of like a rocket, except that you don't need to provide your own oxygen. And it only works in atmosphere. And it does that because the front of it is open. And what it does is that it opens up, it takes in oxygen, it closes, and then it explodes in the combustion chamber.
Ah.
So it's constantly taking in oxygen and exploding and pushing forward. That's why it's a pulse jet.
Because it bursts in pulses. Got it. All right.
And it makes a loud buzzing noise from hell.
Which is appropriate given that you ride a giant flying wasp.
Oh, yeah. And the hardest part for me in doing the homework was that I had to figure out a guidance system for it because I did not have the tools to make a gyroscope within those kinds of tolerances in a pre-electricity era.
Yeah. We had some Magitech, but we were in the state of we're finding old Magitech and salvaging it. We're just reverse engineering.
I did not have a lathe that was that precise. I couldn't do it. And so what I ended up coming up with was a system where I'd use beads of mercury suspended in rubber tubes as accelerometers. And use those accelerometers to basically just keep it going on a set course with timers and things made by alchemical fuses.
All right.
And as for the payload, what we did was we loaded the thing up with holy water, and I put a timed fuse alchemist fire inside of the holy water, and then I put a bigger batch of alchemist fire behind it. And so what happened was once it got over the fortress, the alchemist fire in the holy water went off, and it vented, and then it exploded in midair. And what that did was it basically made it rain holy water.
Yeah, and most people might think, well, what's so great about that? Well, one, we got rid of a lot of their undead. Two, the necromancers are covered in holy water, so their unholy vestments are now fucked up.
You kind of buried the lead. What ended up happening was that we tried to go in and they tried to raise skeletons and they melted.
That was awesome.
Yeah, and our initial thinking was not only would that basically fuck up their undead and their ability to raise more undead, it would also make the entire area muddy, and considering that most of the party had flying mounts?
Yeah, one had, basically only like two of us had flying mounts, and even then, I was riding on the back of a guardian we salvaged, and I was basically just...
Yeah, so...
I was tearing down the door.
We didn't need to deal with any friggin' terrain problems whatsoever, so making the terrain screwed up was in our best interest.
Yeah,
Yeah. And so, as I've told Andrew, because I like giving him a heads up before I do something incredibly stupid, since we're building this kingdom, and I've now got this working design for a intermediate range missile, I'm totally going to build a bunch more of them and use them to defend the kingdom.
Yeah,
If anyone tries to raise an army and step to us, then they're just going to have a buzz bomb to the face.
Yeah, that's pretty much what Deadly would call them, buzz bombs. You probably have them painted to look, like yellow and black. Like giant wasps
Well,
coming for you.
that's actually their historical nickname. So yay.
Awesome. Awesome. Yeah.
So yeah, they'll get buzz bombs to the face.
So
And
many things
I
could
won't
have
load him with
gotten
holy
wrong.
water this time. I won't load him with holy water this time. I'll just load him with alchemist fire.
Alchemist fire, alchemist ice, acid, anything. Just load them with anything and it'll be fun.
Put thunderstones on the nose cone.
Oh! Well, speaking of which, don't you like mixed thunderstones with flash bombs?
Oh yeah, I've totally been putting my thunderstones in flash bomb powder, so that makes it so that they're blinded and deafened.
So they're Deku seeds, basically.
Basically.
Hey, I mean we're in Zelda, and yeah, it's definitely.
If it was a Dragon Ball Z game, I'd just shout solar flare.
Exactly. It's definitely. Yeah, this is definitely one of the stories of player ingenuity, and I'm pretty sure Andrew was pretty happy with this, because if we didn't do that, we would have had... He gave us, basically, the big-ass tank to roll right in, but we'd still have to handle a crap ton of mooks. But this way, not only did we deal with it, but it basically gave a... let us deal with whatever bosses. And we'll talk about crazy bosses later, because this adventure still has one crazy boss we have to talk about, right?
Yeah, I think we should save for our current adventure until we get a little bit further in, and maybe get a certain guest who did a certain thing to a certain enemy.
Yes, that boss is what I'm talking about. So everyone, let me know what you think about this series. I might have other guests, because we can always get Argyle on here, because he probably has a lot of experience with D&D as well.
We could also get Carl. We could get a few other people, yeah.
Yeah, this is just an experimental series. If you don't like it, we'll just do it whenever. I sort of want to do this to help preserve some of these things into history, so to speak.
So if you don't like this series and you want him to go back to doing more FTL, well, tough.
Well, you can always support me on the Patreon.
Well, that too. Yeah, if you pay for keeping the lights on, then we'll probably do whatever you want. Oh, Lord and Master.
Seriously, we bards need to eat.
You might be a bard. I consider myself a red wizard.
What's the difference between a red wizard and a regular wizard?
Well, red wizards are from Thay and they're evil assholes.
Crew, ladies and gentlemen, we'll see you all next time.